and welcome to the DM's Travel Book Club, a guide to the inner planes, where
Woo.
each episode we take a look at a different plane of existence as outlined in the great wheel cosmology in the role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. I actually really like our intro.
I know. Well, we wrote it.
Good point.
Good point.
So, Fiona, we
Yes.
are here.
Yes.
But where is here? And this
Where
is
is
not me
this?
doing our outro. This
Yeah, I
is
was
me.
like, where are we going with this? Well, you can tell I've suited up for this particular one. I've got my gilet, but I like to think of it as my sort of lifesaver vest.
Is that a life preserver?
Life preserver, yes, because we are going from the burning crematorium vibes of the plane, elemental plane of fire. And we're going to go down to the soft, watery world of the elemental plane of, well, water. So this is where we are for our final stop. To the bottomless deep for our final sort of main elemental plane before we go have to do all the offshoots and stuff. So we've come around full circle from sort of the air, which was like the least hostile, to then two incredibly hostile like earth and fire, and now we're here in like the second least hostile of water, the bottomless deep. And so yes, I'm feeling a little bit more relaxed and much cooler. Actually, much cooler.
Yes. Refreshing. Refreshed. It's not salty water as well, so it says it has a sweet flavour, this water.
What do you think that tastes like then?
I imagine it's like sugar water.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. If it's not salt water, I was like thinking it's maybe like some aloe vera, but without the bits in it.
Not tonic water, but like soda water.
Maybe water completely filtered, like your Brita filter water. Because I was like, what does that taste like? Yeah, Evian. Yes, it has that really weird little aftertaste.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What I was gonna you mentioned something straight off the bat, which is the first thing that I think is we've always talked about is the sort of physical conditions of each of the planes. Personally, as a D&D person and knowing how D&D works, I would technically argue that this is possibly the nicer of the two planes between air and water, and the simpler.
I guess the issue with air is that we can breathe in it. This place we can't breathe with it naturally. I guess that's where they said least hostile.
That's the only thing. But water breathing is a relatively simple spell and is a relatively open spell for people. Like a lot of people have it and access to it, and there are magical items that offer it to you, etc., etc., etc. On top of gadabouts and on all the like that you can do. Additionally to that. Additionally, there are people and races and species of the planes and all of them that can actually do that anyway. That can actually breathe, not only maybe not even need to breathe like an astral elf, but even can breathe water. Yeah,
so, very amphibious, isn't it? Yeah.
So I think because there are, in theory, species who cannot breathe air technically or equally have to difficulty with that, whilst the thing that air has is
you do
falling
fall
for infinity, and if you don't have the intelligence skills in your character, then you may fall forever.
Yes, that's true.
So I don't know, and I also personally feel so much kind of calmer with the idea of floating in this endless sea and sort of swimming with the fishes and sort of seeing things that I do in this infinite blue. Oh my gosh, it's
a bit more frightening, isn't it? This idea of just never seeing. Yeah, I guess the thing with air, because we'll come on to the hazards and stuff like that, and like you said, the physical conditions. But firstly, it has similar things with air. So that idea of gravity, there is no sort of up and down necessarily, because this is the difference between the elemental plane of water and just a general ocean. Is this idea that there is no surface and there is no bottom, so to speak. It is just water, and again, with your vision, will be impaired somewhat. You can't necessarily see as far out as you would probably normally see, but as a result, then you've just got this nice sort of bluey, sort of greeny light that sort of dapples. You don't know where that light source is, so you can see, and it is very sort of gentle. So I can imagine, if you're sort of just treading water ever so lightly. The only thing I'd say with that is I don't know the last time you went swimming, Hamilton. You probably went more recently than I did. It is quite tiring to swim. And I know treading water, there's that whole thing of if you're stuck in the middle of the ocean, can you tread water for 3 minutes before you're rescued?
You meant to float on your back.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just imagine swimming could be just very tiresome. So in the end, I just might be like, yeah, I might just be floating dead in the water as I'm like, right, carry on a little bit.
Yeah,
Especially
but
if
you
you've got like
don't have
breathing
to keep. You've
apparatus.
got will breathe water, so you can just chill in the
I
water
have
and
now. Yes,
find a nice
absolutely.
current, as we will find out. But the thing you
Mm.
mentioned as well, to add to that, is that there is no pressure. I don't know if you,
Yes.
yes, there is no
Yeah.
water pressure because of this lack of
Oh, for
top and
God.
bottom.
Yeah, that freaks me out
There are no
as a
bends.
yeah, that freaks me out as an actual real person on Earth. It's like I can't imagine like going down deep. When you see these
Yeah.
films are like we must get to the bottom of the ocean. And, oh, we must rush up, and I'm like, but what about the bends? The real
Bends, yeah,
horror, not the
exactly.
monster.
Yeah,
It's the
exactly.
bends and hurting yourself. Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah.
That's a big nope for me
It
in these
freaks, yeah.
games.
No, I know.
Ooh.
It's a horrible thing, and the idea of bubbles in your bloodstream just doesn't
Mm.
sound healthy. But obviously,
Mm.
it's not. It is. But that makes it again like that's something they could have added in potentially to make it more hostile, and they didn't. So I thought that was kind of
That's true.
interesting.
You can imagine again, just because we know we've got tables coming up in this particular
We
chapter for
do.
various stuff. Oh, hey, we love good tables. You think to yourself, gosh, if they did put in pressure, there would be a massive F-off table for it, and be like,
Could you
oh,
imagine?
you're
There'd be
this
like a
then.
diagram with like cylindrical circles from the
Yeah.
center point, and it would just be like,
It'll just be the most depressing thing to like bring it
yeah.
out to your players. Like, okay, how deep did you
Well,
go? And
like
you're
the
like, ooh.
Outlands, which I missed that from. I must admit, I do actually miss that because I'm maybe a bit of a nerd, but surprise, surprise. But from the Outlands in 5e, where they took away the idea that they had the spell rings,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and I quite like that because that gave all that reasoning, and I think we mentioned this on our chat about the 5e Planescape. It gave reasoning for the walking wizard towers.
Citadels. Yeah.
Yeah, walking citadels, because it was like I've leveled up as a spellcaster. I better get in the highest spell slots I can
I need
get.
to move. We're moving.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I can now do better things. So I can take over some other people that can't. And you always want to be in this or. Oh crap! There's someone with higher spell slots. I better get back into the fifth where I could be. Yeah, exactly.
Like...
And I quite like that. And so I don't know. Maybe they could. I don't know. It's just the fact that what I thought would be interesting with that as a different mechanic to what they have gone with, which I don't know if it's worth going on to, which is storm surges and whirlpools.
Yeah. So that's how you get here, isn't it? To the plane.
Yeah, sorry, I meant currents. I meant the currents. I get confused. The currents that whirlpools.
I guess we can come on to that. Well, why do we? Let's start right at the beginning. How do we even get?
How do we get here?
How do we get here to the elemental plane of water?
Well, you can get there by many different ways. I will start with the more obvious vortices, even though they put them at the end. Yes. I think those are the ones that we can easily fathom as a prime material plane.
That's very true.
Primer is like. You could just imagine it and it will be there. So big expanses of water, things like whirlpools and it says storm surges, like where water like is basically tidal waves coming onto the sea, from the seabed or down, just I've heard of ones in waterfalls. It doesn't mention it here, but I have heard of them in other
I did think about
books.
that, yeah.
I'm sure about that. But you can imagine those sorts of elements, and if you're a DM, adding in, those sorts of places. On top of that, Isgard, my favorite plane.
Your favorite plane, yes.
Yes.
Yes. I never say this right. Is it Muspelheim? Muspelheim, yes.
Muspelheim. I mean,
it's Ysgardian giants, so I'm instantly like, ooh, yes, exactly.
Yeah. So the Silver Eye, which is we looked at that when we were there, which is when you look into it, you cast a gaze over, you get to see your future before you. But if you wade out carrying a staff made of yew wood, you can open a gate.
As you do, yeah.
Oh well, you never know. And you can go to and from the plane of water. And it's 100 yards in diameter once it's opened, and it remains open for a full hour. So you could, as it mentions there, sizable amount of people you can take with you with your yew tree stick.
It does talk about though, like going, hey, by the way, make sure you are like, this is earlier on and like how to get there. It's like, hey, just be aware that some vortices or some planes, depending, where the water goes. So you could go rushing in, but also that water could come rushing out and completely flood and drown other passers-bys and stuff like that. So I can't remember when we went last time to the Shimmering Eye if there was like guardians or anything like that. But I can imagine people going, hang on, before you just wade out with your bit of view and be like, open, just be like flooding this whole like
geyser.
Yeah,
Well, the
exactly.
geysers are a good one, for going there as well potentially, or maybe they're for planar steam, but it you know what it makes me really want to see the next D&D movie to go to Sigil,
Mm.
because you can imagine that could be a scene walking down one of the streets of Sigil, and then
Yeah.
water flowing out of some place, everyone falling around. It's like, I'm sorry, I was just trying to get to the plane of water.
Yeah, and you get barred, and then the Lady of Pain just snaps them and
Yeah,
takes them
exactly.
elsewhere.
No, I didn't
Yeah.
mean it.
I
Yeah,
didn't
that's
mean
it.
it.
Mazed.
Stop it. Yeah.
And that's the intro. We've written it.
We've done it.
Call us up, wizards.
Well, wizards aren't writing it, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
They're involved in some respect.
They'll take the money, I'm sure.
Where else can we get there from?
So there's the Oceanus, of course, the very famous sort of big purest of waters outside the elemental planes that goes through the 4 layers of Elysium. What's interesting about this is what I was referring to before, like this particular Oceanus gate to the elemental plane of water. It does have gardenels, and gardenels are fun. I think I've talked about it on one of our previous episodes about when we looked at Planescape, that they sort of removed the playable option. There would have been unearthed arcana about testing gardenels and bringing them back, and they're back, but only as non-playable characters, and they're just a lot of fun. Yeah, I think it's just a bit of a shame, because obviously, I know you can play anyone and be anything, etc. But they made an effort to do it.
Support it, and it makes more people do it. It
just links back to that the old Planescape and the old sort of inner plane stuff as we've been looking at, because Gardeners was quite a big thing in Elysium when we looked at it as there as well. And there is somebody who watches over this particular gate, and I'm going to say their name wrong, is Alec, who is the son of a mariner and a Nereid, who's some sort of water elemental. They're said to unleash strokes of lightning from his eyes and exhale gusts of tornado wind. Whether or not this is true, he has certainly done a fine job of controlling access to the Oceanus Gate. So I like this idea that it's probably just a normal bloke.
Yeah,
but because he's got this power, this backstory to them, they're like, oh, so mysterious.
There's some great writing in this one, particularly the way it's written from the beginning, from the off on this one, about how I tried to get
a person.
Started off with trying to a Triton, and then they failed them, so I couldn't get a Nereid, and they failed me, and a Water Genasi replacement also didn't come through. So I've had to. So it seems like someone doesn't want to tell me what's going on here, so I've had to write it myself. And it's got some nice little bits like that, as you said, like it said that he unleashes strokes of lightning from his eyes, exhales gusts of winds. Whether or not this is true, though, he's definitely done a good job, though. So maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. It's kind of great.
And that's something to point out, like, because we didn't really mention it, but yeah, like last time when we visited the elemental plane of fire, obviously there was a very strong point of view of someone actually reporting it from the plane of fire, an actual native. And then here we don't have anyone. So again, it's that opposites, essentially, that you were saying. So it makes me think of, is there something that the plane of water is trying to hide? Or is it just because it's a general attitude that, like, things come and go, we're not bound by your things? It's a bit more neutral in the sense of, like, I'm all right, I don't have to, etc., rather than having, like, I want to give you a full, like, what we're talking about here, about this particular plane. So I thought that was interesting. So I feel here, this all our information that we're getting for this particular plane, it's all a bit pieced together, a bit dotted together, and so maybe, again, we'll go through it. I didn't see any inconsistencies, she says in quotation marks, but I like the idea it could be for this particular one, because we've not had it
there, isn't it? Just in that, you've already got a little something you're thinking about. Do you know what I mean? And it just sparks that sort of idea of, like, oh, maybe there is something.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, just going, like you said, like, there's obviously these storm surges and ever-changing and the whirlpools as well. And yeah, I do think it makes sense. Why can't we have stuff like whirlpools? Why can't we have stuff like waterfalls? That totally makes sense. Or having a really deep pool and stuff. Because I think this is the main thing I sort of got from, like, what they talked about, storm surges and whirlpools, is that anyone that travels using these things, it's not deliberate. They just happen to get caught up with it, and it's by accident that they happen to arrive here. Whereas before, where people were like, yes, I'm going to go through this firestorm, I'm going to find the big tornado and get, here it's like, oh no, I don't know. And even then, you're not guaranteed. I mean, you're never guaranteed with any of these sort of water size.
It's like
anyway.
the Bermuda Triangle is probably one.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
God, I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah. But it also talks about like, hey, these things are so vicious, they're going to tear up your ships. I mean, it's also going to be the same, I think, with any fire tornadoes or anything like that. But this is like, yeah, it's not as easy as you think to get here if you're using the sort of more natural things, which can happen or maybe happen more often, but also incredibly hard to reach. And even then, it's going to be a complete accident when you get into them.
Exactly, and it is that sort of, you imagine it's the sort of Kraken scene from what's his name, Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, but without being a Kraken and just being the vortices of water and just sucking
spinning around,
and that
is a very cool scene in that final in the third film where they do that, and then the boat is just on the sand. Obviously, that would be different for us, but just very cool, very interesting. Really cool.
So then our hazards, though, obviously we've mentioned breathing. Sight and sound is worth noting is that sight is limited to 60 feet unless you are a native, where you get twice that. Infravision does work, but that only works at half its distance.
So I have a question, because this sounds like a very silly Fiona question, but I actually don't know what infravision is. What is that?
Heat vision.
It's what?
Heat vision.
Oh, it's heat vision. Oh, okay.
Infrared, so when you see them at nighttime, it's heat. Yeah, heat.
That goggles. That makes more sense. I confuse night vision with infravision then, because I was like, is that just an old way of? Because obviously they're called like night goggles and stuff like that. So that's why I was like,
Yeah, so night goggles are different because they pick up light in different ways, and the heat visions are when you get those blue to red ones.
Yeah. So therefore that makes total sense then, infravision, because obviously the body temperature is going to be much cooler.
Yeah, and that's why it doesn't work in it doesn't work at all in the plane of fire, because it says infravision doesn't work at all. So it's just like
everything is on fire. It's one bright light.
It's just red. It's like.
That's so funny. I had not considered it. But then you have a very interesting hazard of combat as well. And I can't remember if it was yourself we're talking to or one of the previous guest hosts we had on DM's Book Club, but I've always found combat in 3D very hard to do unless you're doing water or if there's like a physical fix. You have to really think about where you're moving to in that sort of cube space. And here in the elemental plane of water, like obviously everyone will be floating at some depth anyway, and if there's no pressure, you can use your swim speed or whatever is allowed to you, because I know obviously depending on what armor, if you've got a swim speed, etc. But like the 3D version, you have to think about it a lot more in this particular plane, and it's something that excites me, but also it's something I absolutely dread as a GM. Just be like, I don't know how I would show it online other than just looking down at a 2D map and then just trying to turn it a different way and maybe having two planes.
Spelljammer always says it ends up like Star Trek. You end up like that. You just end up like that. You all get connected to one another, and when you look at it, it's a 2D space.
It's fine.
It's not worth it.
Don't worry, it's not worth it.
If you're Matt Mercer and you've got buckets and reams of bloody plastic standee thingies, then great, go for it. But also after watching Quinn's Quest today on Lancer and really enjoying that one.
Yes, it's a very good one. That one.
He's just like, bloody hell. Yeah, it's just like D&D combat is so freaking boring unless you love it. And like I was thinking about things other people have said to me recently, and I'm just like, it is freaking boring, but I mean sometimes it's really fun, and when you do have it, but bloody hell, if you don't want to add 3D, just don't. And also theater of the mind.
I think 100%. I think like whilst it's very interesting to have this concept, I don't personally, for me as an person who runs quite a lot of games online, I would just literally have it as a 2D. You all end up on the same plane. If you're in person, maybe it'd be a cool thing to do, but only if everyone else is on the same page and everyone's willing to help each other out. Because there's nothing worse when people go, well, actually, it's 40 feet high. I've got 10 feet left, and I'm like, I do not.
See, I use it as and when I require it. As in, if they're doing really well against my dragon and my dragon's flying in the air and they want to get there in 60 feet, I'm going to check it. But if they need a little bit of a boost and they're not doing so well against the dragon, I ain't going to check it. Do you see what I mean? So it's I can use the rule when I need the rule, and I can
rules protecting me, the GM.
So but if they do something cool as well, I'll let them get away with it. That's the whole game. That's part of the game, isn't it? That's the rules, really. Can you say something cool enough that I forget the other rules? Yeah,
to make me go, that's too cool. Yeah, the rule of cool, literally.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, let's get on to what you were talking about before, the currents stuff. Because, like similar to like wind, we had an air. firestorms, the idea of tremors, etc. Of course, in the plane of water, we have currents. And my God, let's talk about these current table. Like,
they got some good names.
They do.
And I like light flow, moderate flow, and strong flow, but that's.
It makes you think of something completely different.
It makes me think of something completely different, though.
It's the sort of thing you go, how are you today, darling? Do you want? I've got the packets here.
You said medium. For moderate, medium flow. So that's exactly what came to mind. And then I was like, or is it a doom tide?
Yeah. I want that packet to be given to me, and it sounds like it's a doom tide of months.
I'm leaving. I'll leave the house for 24 hours. It's fine.
Absolutely. I do like that. This like you said, the on a natural 20, the strength of the current is a doom tide, and that means you have a -10 to any of your any checks that you make, because the current is a doom tide. That feels, compared to like the wind one we had before, where we were questioning about is a hurricane bigger than a typhoon?
It
or
definitely
that
was wrong. They had it wrong.
Yeah,
they had it wrong.
Here I'm like, I feel like it goes like current.
They're not, but they're kind of shit names until it gets to doom tide. Like everything else is pretty like still light current, moderate current, and it's light bore, flow, and tide.
It's light, moderate, strong, light, moderate, strong, light, moderate, strong.
I wanted
and then
something
doom.
more. Yeah, exactly. I was like, if they got to 20, when unlike a very opposite like Wizards of the Coast to actually do something good at level 20, but in this they actually should have gone to level 20. They made a good one and gone back and gone, could we not call this like charging current, or like eviscerating current, or you know what I mean? Or
I think we should change it so that it's more like how the player responds when you tell them what the difficulty is, the adjustment, so they go, oh heck, or fuck. Shit. No, would be that one.
Exactly. I like that. That's the new way we're gonna do it. We'll rewrite that.
And then it's just like in quotation marks, like hand in face palm, double face palm, etc.
But these do feel a bit like someone's gone, oh, we need a table for the water one. And,
and it's not even just the strength. We've talked about this before. It's also like the rounds, like how long the current lasts. I'm like
1d6 centuries.
Yeah, it's like, come on.
It
goes from like rounds, turns, hours. Okay, the days, weeks, fortnights gets a look in. Like, sod the fortnights, because you could roll like 2d. You could roll like 2 on a 1d6 weeks. I guess it's supposed to be like it occurs fortnightly. I don't know. I just feel you don't need that. And then months, years, decades, and then centuries. Put millennium
they just
in.
didn't want to go for millennia, but
they
didn't.
I
not?
think should have done, shouldn't they?
Or just don't group them in twos. Just go 1 to 4, 1 to give. You know what I mean?
It feels like there's too much, and like I feel like rounds. I don't know. It's a bit bitty, isn't it?
Yeah. To be honest, I don't give a shit. if I was playing it, I'm ignoring it.
Oh, of course you're gonna know. This is a constant hazard.
If it's 1d6 centuries, like, am I actually like? Unless your players cut, like, you go away and come back and you go, well, that current's still going here, and they go, cool. Thanks.
We're busy. Yeah, exactly.
I really don't give a crap.
It's that one person goes, oh wait, is that current still here? And you go, no. Oh, God. But
Fuck, if that's what you're relying on for your hitting points in your campaigns.
God. Yeah. The real plot hooks of it. And of course, if you determines the size variant, we go back to that elemental pocket table way back on page 14, just like this.
Oh, fucking hell.
Just make it up, guys. Like, I think that first table is quite good at determining like how strong it is, especially if they get a bonus to their rolls or anything like that. And then that's it. Sod the rest of it. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
I know
they are small fish in a big pond,
nice.
Yeah. So
I like the bonuses as well, being a positive as much as a negative. Whirlpools, I think it's just, I don't know, they just bore me. It's just like if you get trapped in one, it hurts. And you might get transported to another part of the plane. Yeah,
30% of them contain it. I mean, fine, it doesn't need to be as long as it is, to be honest with you. It feels like they put in a bit too much effort into them, where I think this information could have been kept in the portals. But
I would have rather they just took one of those tables into the whirlpools. Maybe the whirlpools have a little bit more of differences. Like maybe they suck in things from another plane.
What debris do they have in the plane?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that'd be more interesting. Like, maybe do you find treasure? I don't know. That would have made it more interesting.
Is there anyone else trapped in here that you can save?
The Kraken. Oh, hello.
Gosh, I fucked up.
I made terrible life decisions.
I've made a huge mistake.
This is fine. Insert your favorite quote there.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you've got other dangers, and I like these.
Yes,
I like these.
as well.
Again, interesting name choices for because they sound like medical conditions. Because you've got burn water.
Yeah, you go to the
my
STD
brain
doc.
had already gone there from the flow.
Yeah.
And then I read burn water, and I'm like, got a bit of burn water.
Well, red tides as well.
And red tides, and then you're like red tides, and you're just like.
It's a shame because they are very cool ideas. Like this idea
of
burn water.
It was just I was just in that brain space.
I think we both were. You're just like, what the? Yeah, because this idea of burn water is when a pocket of elemental mineral or ooze dissolves in the plain water, so it's a little bit acidic. It's tainted. I love that idea. That you like.
It's a really great idea. Yeah,
you're just like, ow. Like it's almost like the sting of a jellyfish, or that you go through college. Like, oh no. And you just realize that you've fucked up, so you're having to like swim desperately out or try and heal yourself in some way.
It reminded me of one that they could have put in, but they didn't, particularly from like the salt plane. Is have you ever seen eels? There's this thing that was on one of the planet Earths when it gets toxic shock, and so it's a freshwater eel.
Yeah.
And you can see it's in this pool under it lives freshwater in caves.
Yeah.
And you can see where the salt water has cement, like the line between the salt water, because the water's so still, and the seawater, because it's so deep underground. The pressure means that the salt it's like super like dissolved salt water, so it's like literally separated.
Whoa.
And what happens is the eel like goes down. Google it. It goes into the water, and it literally goes like this, and like completely goes limp because of the amount of like the insane intense amount of salt water. And then it moves again, but it's
the
has
shock of it,
instant toxic shock from it. And I thought that's something cool. I don't know if that planet Earth was out by then, but it was it was something that made me think.
I'll be honest as well. Toxic shock is also something else. Could mean also something else if we're going along with the flow stuff as well. But yeah, that's
of course you can get lots of there's lots of things you get toxic shock from, but it was
that's cool. I hadn't even thought of that. So yeah, having those particular hazards, if it's certainly the plane of salt, that could like something the shock of like being in salt water.
Something you could add in. It just you could use the similar things, but if you wanted to be like on the way to salt or something like that, you could implement that as a like mechanic that like
a mechanic or a moment that you see,
or like some sort of barrier to overcome. The first person gets to it, and literally like you go incapacitated for like a round or something like that, and everyone's like, what the fuck's going on? Like, and gives your players something to be like, what happened? Why can't we go in? And then someone might realize it or something like that. I don't know.
And then red tides are a bit more like the acidic stuff. Like it hurts and it can burn your stuff away, but it's probably not as bad as this red tide stuff, which is a torrent of fast-moving water which has become infected with a dangerous disease or microscopic parasites, which sounds like something from a horror film. I've got to be honest. I don't like the sound of this. Like weirdly, I'm thinking of like teeny tiny piranhas that are microscopic levels. They just eviscerate anything that comes your way. But obviously, if they get into your bloodstream, the disease manifests as a deadly one. So hopefully you're not breathing the water. Maybe you have some sort of apparatus rather than having a water breathing spell. I don't know. It's not entirely clear. I don't think.
It says if you have there's a no breath spell. So there is a breath spell where you don't breathe. I don't know if that's still in new D&D, but old D&D.
Probably not.
And then obviously you said if you're using something else.
It talks about this idea of like this if you put this poison torrent towards like a city or a stronghold, it could easily annihilate and cripple them without you even stepping foot.
Yeah, they were saying people you can alter and direct these currents if you have the power to, like direct water, like manipulate water and stuff.
If you were like some sort of power, an
druid,
elemental, a druid, or an elemental water power of some sort, that's pretty brutal. They're treated as moderate tides, so it's pretty on that table.
Pretty high. It's 18 on the table of 20.
It's pretty brutal.
It's pretty high.
Pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's coming at you at speed. Like, what? Fuck. Yeah. So, but yeah, and that's pretty much apart from the other hazards we'll get onto of like the inhabitants. That's pretty much.
I mean, that's always a hazard whenever we go to these planes.
Yeah. So then you got moving about, which it says is just like swimming. And and you can just use the time and movement chapter of the player's handbook.
I like it is that all a body has to do is flap his arms, stroke his fins, or otherwise make some effort to propel himself. But many explorers do make use of mounds. So like I can imagine giant seahorses grabbing onto shoals of fish as you're making your way, dolphins, the usual sort of stuff. So and also if you talk to
Disney movie.
Yeah, any Disney movie, Little Prince, Little Mermaid, Under the Sea, and of course, if you talked about it similar to when we were in the elemental plane of Earth, that water elementals can also give, if you touch them or if you come into agreement, they can also give their powers to you. So not only just water breathing, but also to be able to movement and stuff as well, to make it easier. So that's pretty good on that front.
Yeah, I'd go for a giant seahorse. Sounds pretty cool.
I think a giant seahorse sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. And then it is the inhabitants, as we mentioned.
Yes.
An interesting it did make me think of is there won't be any whales and there won't be any sea mammals. And I was like, of course, that's such a weird thing to conceive. But you're like, I forget that they breathe air, so there's no seals, no.
It's kind of because when I always think of when you think of the sea, one of the things is a deep blue, a blue whale is always the answer on QI, right? So now I'm like, they don't have those there. But as a result, because of there's no air and there's no pressure, it means that there are giant versions of things, which. That is.
What was the size? It said hundreds, if not thousands, of feet in length of a shark.
I don't know about that.
That's what does make me kind of go against it being a nice place to be. Because
then it says as always, all fish are actually carnivores, and you're like, I'm sorry, and it's like there's this massive clownfish.
There's not many. I mean, there's not many plant-eating fish.
But then
there aren't any. Are there?
You're asking the wrong person.
I think the only thing that's considered the we're going to consider it the vegetarian of the sea. It's those that eat plankton. Do you know what I mean? The one or eggs or something like that. I guess because I was watching another Planet Earth yesterday, I think, or the day before, when it was these they found this thing only a few years ago where whale sharks. Hundreds of whale sharks go around these oil rigs to feed off the eggs that these animals, because they've all lived there, started doing these, and so they just keep going around, and there's hundreds, and it zooms out, and there's all these huge whale sharks are the most alien animal. I don't like them. They've got these really wide. They're kind of just such a shape and in plan, and it was it's very cool to watch. Again, get on Netflix, people.
And that would be cool to have something like that. Obviously, I know oil rigs are above the surface, but it'd be nice to have
metallic structures or something.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have that in here. Yeah, we'll come on to the sites in a second, but I was a bit
it lacks that, doesn't it?
Yeah,
particularly when it. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, because there's only 3 sites compared to the other previous. There's always 4. This one only had 3 for some reason. But just to go back on what you said about, when I'm thinking of giant versions of fish, obviously the scariest fish that I can think of, or 2 scary things I can think of, is those giant, horrific crab king ones, which have this huge. They're just they're just spiders, but crabs, or an anglerfish, because anglerfish.
Oh, you don't like those, yeah? Have you ever seen a goblin shark?
Yeah, no, thank you. I don't. Weirdly, the sea is not as nice as. Yeah, I'm like, no, I don't like.
Yeah,
any
when
of
you
these
get
things.
deep down in that sea, you're like, what the fuck's going on down there? You people have been up to no good down here, you know.
But that's the thing, because you always hear oh well, we've actually not explored I don't know 70% of the ocean's floor, and you're like, what the fuck do you mean you've not explored it?
What the fuck are you doing?
What's down there? And he goes, well, we keep losing equipment, and I'm like, no, that's because they're learning.
Well, it's the fact that they believe that there is. They found carcasses of huge squids that are insane sizes, and that freaks me out. Having been in oceans and stuff, and being
I don't like being high up. I don't like being in the ocean. I will stay in Earth if I have to. I will go.
Pools. And then there's other things, and again, the annoying thing, and you do kind of it always annoys me you don't get some of these monster stats, but you get murderous beholder eyes of the deep to the passive Zaratan in the terms of monsters. Mottled worms, which is an aquatic version of the purple worm.
Don't like that.
Exactly. A deadly Vodyanoi, hunger constantly for the taste of sentient flesh. So it's like, I don't want my flesh to be unsentient.
I need it to have an intelligence score of at least 8.
So I can know that it knows that I'm eating it.
It knows I'm coming for it.
Yeah. And then you get the elementals. So we've already mentioned Nereids, but there's also
water weirds,
Marids, and
that's the genie race,
which is the genie race as well. Yeah, sorry, that's right. I was trying to find the other mephits you mentioned. I've just lost where's the list?
There's like Tritons, the Sahagin, Mermen, a word I can absolutely not pronounce beginning with I's. I don't know if you've got any of those ones. Reef Giants. It's under other races I'm looking at just now. It is.
There's where it is. Other races.
There's the Reef Giants, which sounds, again, I can imagine.
Itchitchitachitl.
Cool.
Yeah, obviously.
I don't know what those are, but they sound scary. And the reef giants, again, I just imagine they're just giants made out of coral.
I bet they're like oxalotl.
They probably are like oxalotl, the Ichilite.
Yeah, I bet they're the sort of watery version of an oxalotl.
But ultimately, like, again, going back to that water, the Marids.
Yes.
Sort of, again, as we always say, legacy content, yada yada yada. But they are known for their pride and ego, and they're like, we look down on other races. Certainly, they tolerate various presences of Jan and Jinn. They hate the Deo, the Ifrit, and all other opposed elemental races. So again, there has been, we talked about it before, this war between water and fire that's been going on in the background. They consider like lesser creatures, such as humans, elves, and just about anything else, rabble, which I think is a great term. I think I'll use that word more. Yeah, they know, but normally it's sort of an indifference. They just go, great, and ignore them unless you become a nuisance. It's the terminology. It's like rabble, nuisance. It's like, oh gosh, you've just done it now. I feel very Mary Poppins about it, and I feel like they're just going to come. They're just going to come, and you're just going to be decimated by a very sort of posh, like, oh dear, well, spit spot, time to die.
Yeah, exactly. But they do also, they love storytelling. So you have a way in if you're a bard and you've got a good story to tell. Is a way around it. But if you fail to amuse them, it's actually worse as well. And also, if you can give them a book, it just says like, it could be seen as an insult to not give them something. But then if you give them something they've already got, it could be, there was a wording for it, wasn't it? Oh, sorry.
Okay, find it.
Offensive. So it could be insulting to not give them one, but if you give them one they've already got, it becomes offensive, and offending someone is much worse than insulting them.
It's like you just can't win. It's like, my great aunt. They must like something, and they always have a criticism, but in this case, if you give them something, it's like, you clearly have no idea, and then you're like, well, that's the end of my life,
exactly.
as I know it. But and there's also, again, like I said, the sort of the mileage, your mileage may vary. This idea about obviously slavery, this comes up again a little bit later on as well. It's like there is this idea that if you can find someone who is good underwater and can find passages to other places, presumably to fire, etc., then having a captive of some sort to do that, to be able to find that is worth quite a lot of money down here as well. So again, but again, it is the way these genies seem to work. They seem to really, it's like in Aladdin, the whole point of the genie is like, I want to wish for my freedom, but here they're like, we don't want anyone to have any freedom. So everyone is under our power.
I prefer the Robin Williamses of this world.
Me too.
And then you've got the powers, and there's lots of boring ones, but there's one with the greatest name ever that I want to skip to, which is
can you say
bloop, bloop.
This is the Kuatoa god, the matron. Sorry, I love that. It's so when I first came across it, you know what, I looked up before we came on this call, like how do you pronounce this, and I found a forum thread going, how the heck do you pronounce this?
Just sounds of water, isn't it? Bloop,
bloop, bloop. Yeah, exactly. That's literally what it said in the thing.
It's so great.
It is great.
And it's live in the gloomy waters known as the murky depths. This region stretches across several hundred miles and mimics the properties of a smoke pocket. At will, she can cause the entire place to become fused with the toxic qualities of a red tide. and she can only suffer harm those that she wishes to suffer. She has a solid sandy bottom to the place, and actually has a gravity. I like the idea. She's a tad balmy, which I kind of like.
What gave that away?
I know. I just kind of like it, and she's no one enters who enters emerges again unless they can offer her some new secret or magical power. And again, there's no guarantees. And she sometimes takes the form of evil or chaotic thoughts that drift. Her petitioners are said to sometimes take the form of evil or chaotic thoughts that drift about, haunting and tormenting people, which I think is just, I don't know, just kind of like, I really like this little,
it stands
sort of
out
wild
compared to the
person.
other ones.
It really
I think,
stood out.
Yeah, because there's quite a lot more powers here. Like we talked about Ol Hydra last time, so the elemental prince of water here, and how
Evil,
of evil. Sorry, there. But then you've got stuff like Atto, and you've got Ben Hadar, and then what was the other one? Edro.
So Ben Hadar being the good aligned, who's just the watery good person. Eradro, which it does say actually is. They say that the good person is like the furthest from pushing the limit what can be considered good, which gives him the only thing which is sort of a bit different. He's actually quite rude and boorish, it says. He's quite arrogant. And so he kind of does care a little bit about, and then also the fact I kind of like Acto when you come to their petitioner.
Yes, the white dwarf, yeah?
Yeah, with the watery dwarf, which is he found this dwarf who got sucked into one of the whirlpools or storm sort of surges, I think, when he was mining and found this water thing. And he died, and he found this dwarf and was like, well, he seems cool. I'm going to make him alive. And so he's just made of what is a dwarf trapped in a water elemental, so made of water.
Yes, the water dwarf. Yes, you're right.
The water dwarf, and so I don't know. It's kind of an interesting character who just roams about, just this,
It doesn't give much in terms of personality or anything like that. It just says like when a body offends the king of the seas, the water dwarf is dispatched to set matters straight, and you're like, no, thank you. That sounds terrifying. This watery creature. Yeah. But other than that, we've got some other ones as well. Like, the Pasana. We've got what's the other? Is Tish?
Tisha. Yeah. It's Tishia. Oh yeah.
Ah, yes. There's a lot more of them, but they're all like, oh, this is the god of the Tritons, or this is the.
Doesn't give you a lot about them. Doesn't give you.
It's just a bit dull. It's just like, oh, this is something that if you were going to interact with these particular people, which you would like, because obviously this is quite a big place. Then this is someone like, oh, this is something that they connect to, but it doesn't give you anything nothing. I don't think as interesting. Like even the proxies, I had this idea of, or is it the? Sorry, I can't find it. The Blue Coven. Yeah, the Blue
Coven.
Yeah.
I thought you like. Bit of hags. You like hag?
I love a good hag. Yeah. And how interesting that is about, like, essentially, they've lost their identities. They're merged to such that they can now only be considered as one hideously evil entity with 3 distinct bodies. Horrible. But again, gives you something to role play.
And it had a nice little background for them in that they tried to summon Ol Hydra and utilize their power, and they failed. But Ol Hydra was like, fair play.
Hey. I've got a job for you. It's like very Alan Sugar,
Yeah, exactly. You're hired. And I like Persona mainly because it's architecture, so it just gave a little bit to the Tritons. And this is the thing, is I would love if this plane, our book, was and they did it with all the other planes. Like, give us the monster manual bits, say, here's the bit, the Tritons, the history of the Tritons. It'd be great to talk about that here and give me more about the peoples of the Tritons and why Persona really personifies. Oh, there you go. Personifies them, and because talks about him being very good with architecture and wanders the plane of water. And Iadro, which
they've
is
gone missing, haven't they?
Lochtar Murfolk, which has gone missing, and then about a decade ago, and slowly the proxies are losing their ability to cast powers, and you're like,
oh, that's clearly gone. But it's not enough information. It's just they've got. I think they've got too many powers here compared to. I think before it was like between 3 and 4, and usually it was like 1 good, 1 evil, 1 neutral. And here we've got a bunch of folks, but I'm just a bit like, they're all. I guess they're all tied to the different it feels
very rushed. It feels like something Someone's just gone write a couple of paragraphs on each of these headings. I've been very disappointed with this one.
I think, but again, it comes back to that whole like point of view, doesn't it? It feels like the editor's gone, I found a bit of information here, a bit of information there, and put it together. So maybe it's consistent in the tone, but I do agree with you. I do feel,
but that could be the tone's consistent with the way they've got the writing. You could argue it both ways, but I know what you mean.
I think that's what I would suggest, but I feel like here it's giving you stuff. But I'm like, for me, it's like
you can't make a campaign out. You can hardly build a campaign out of these, though. I would suggest.
I don't know why I would come to the elemental plane of water currently, other than like find something that will help me breathe underwater, or maybe I've been summoned to go and find where this missing deity has gone. But I like, why would I? I don't know.
It asks a lot of the GM, which is fine. It's just. I think when you, at the time, if this was coming out now, it would cost you like 35 quid. You'd be a bit like, okay, thank you. This was an interesting read. It's a fun and enjoyable thing to read, and is a nice, like, primer to the worlds, the planes, and understanding how they work. But it's not a book for campaigning in them. That's kind of how I would see it.
I agree.
We get the sites with
the 3 sites, which
the Avenger.
Yeah, what a class! What a like. Wait, what? Think of a name. I got it.
Yeah, and I like it's. I mean, it's a good couple of paragraphs. Or not actually a site. No description would be complete without mention of the Avenger. This mechanical creation is shaped more or less like a giant dark grey manta ray, which makes me just think Spelljammer.
Yeah, Spelljammer or Stingray. I was thinking of the Jerry Anderson thing.
Oh, frick, yes.
Sorry, Stingray.
Not as cool as Captain Scarlet, but
I saw Stingray first. So I do have a special spit in my heart.
I do like Stingray. I just had the Captain Scarlet car is the coolest car. That's the thing.
It's got both. Anyway,
all of them are good. To
Jerry
be honest,
Anderson,
I think a Jerry Anderson focused podcast would be amazing.
We wouldn't get very far.
The artificer who runs it though is called Lumbermad. It's 30 yards long, not counting its tail, and twice that across. It can travel very swiftly, rotating screws along the tail of its like, which is a bit like those things. It reminds me a little bit of the Gungan ships in Phantom Menace. And then and it kind of has some people possibly think about how it might work, but whatever. But it also, if attacked, it defends over power bolts of lightning, which is like
in the water, just like
in water. It's like
everything's
move,
just
right.
Absolutely. Well, I guess that as long as you're on the inside, you're fine. But pretty brutal. And then you have the Citadel of 10,000 pearls.
10,000.
It's atop a circular, free-floating coral reef that spreads over several dozen miles. So I can imagine that being incredibly impressive because you just it looms into view almost like, I've forgotten what it's called. BioShock Rapture, the city of Rapture, when you first go down and it just reveals itself, this horrible darkness with all the fish. So I can imagine if it's my opinion, it's like, we've come to the Citadel, we've been called here, and it's just dead bits of reef have been broken off, etc. And I don't know, these horrible
creepy Ayn Rand style talks going on about capitalism in the background.
Yes, and the deep sea diving suits are moving around, these sort of the big daddies, etc. Again, I would totally put that in here right now because I just think they're really cool.
It's a great game. It's a great game. And the City of Glass is cool, which is the sigil of the inner planes. And it does say, if the City of Glass is the sigil of the inner plane, then who's the elemental lady of pain? I don't know.
But again, I feel what they could have done is, I guess, because I think like the Avenger is interesting as a side off thing. City of 10,000 pearls, like it's mentioned because of the Marids, so that they're here. If this is the sigil of the inner planes, we need so much more information about.
We need this as a separate, good 3-page, 4-page thing with the plan, map, everything. What
are the districts? Because that feels very cool. Like if this is where you're always going to come to.
It says it's got the most portals and gates and vortices that take you across all the other elemental planes. So this is your hub point in the elemental plane. This should be front and center. This should be in the first plane we go to. It should have started, like, if you were going to write this now and that's how they would do it, you would have started with this. Your most people are going to enter the city of the elemental planes through the City of Glass.
Yeah.
And this is where we will start our journey. And you would go through that, and you would talk about this domed city where all these different people, species from across the elements, like, and you would introduce individuals and the marrieds as well as people, because you can, it's got air to breathe. There are other people hanging about. And
The,
you're
the place itself is not made of glass. It's just got this huge, beautiful dome. So it looks a bit like Gallifrey. That idea of it just being encased in this
or
this
the
glass.
Simpsons episode. And,
oh yes.
and it's just, and that's it. And you would be like, this is how you could really like whisk people away in a narrative into the city, into in the elemental planes. And maybe from here it's where you start an adventure which takes you across all the planes and the inner planes. You know, you are going to be fighting with elemental flame giants whilst trying to then heading to the negative plane to see if you can escape death, whilst you take to salt to see if you can quench your thirst on the fire. You know, like you could just see that sort of page being written, and instead you get 4 paragraphs. And that's it.
I totally get, like, you could have like you said, like almost like the bubble car-esque, like very much like maybe Jerry Anderson style, like design of this place to be underwater and get the Mr. Ons
Even
out.
just freaking Phantom Menace would have been better.
Phantom Menace
than
on
this.
it. Whoa, careful! Suddenly there's a whole lot
That's
of
not
Star
pod
Wars.
racing.
This is pod racing.
This is pod race.
So I think it's a little bit of a shame, and there's a little bit more stuff in like the Citadel of 10,000.
It's a little bit
pearls.
damp.
It's a little bit. Very good, very good. And it talks about like the idea of festivals, and it really plays into, like you were saying before, about being married, about like offending them, and the person that governs there, like one false move, one social gaffe or misstep, then you're done for. And I just think like it's such a shame. And I think, was it the map as well? It's just there's no map.
There's no map. There's a picture.
It's a nice picture. It's a bit too big for the actual. I think I would expect like a map maybe of the City of Glass. That would be fun, but
we get a cool picture. I mean, it's a bit of a quick sketch, to be fair, and feels very much on point.
I think it just is. It's just a shame. And then the final thing to say is like, well, planeswalkers, why would they come to the elemental plane of water? And as you said, they come to the City of Glass, and that's the interplanar hub. That's where they'll get missions. That's where they'll come stuff, and maybe they'll buy some water breathing stuff so they can go out and explore. Maybe it's going to be like a haulage, like, there's a missing cargo and you need to go find it, all that sort of thing. And like I said,
maybe that's a good one, isn't it? Like they get swept up in a shipwreck and the shipwreck ends there and you've got to go find it, and someone's already taken it, which means, it's classic fetch quest. Definitely. And that could be quite interesting, again, introducing this idea of like fishes being much bigger than they are and all that sort of thing, like, but nothing too deep, so to speak, in a sense of like maybe not as like, because you could go into like the political war stuff, but
perhaps,
I think you could. I think also, if you are someone who's done Planescape, or you like the idea of being underwater, or you like the idea of the City of Glass, and you want to start somewhere, that could be another place to start. And I think we all could probably, most GMs could come up with that sort of environment and sell it, and make that a really interesting place, and do a planar and make that your city of choice for your campaign. It doesn't. And then maybe whilst you're doing that, pepper in a bit of the other elements into it. And that feels like as the word it used there, the nexus of your campaign, really. And I think it could be fun. And, if that's what people are interested in, I think that, why not? Of all the cities, I think the City of Brass is too hard to manage constantly feed, whilst this one's actually the least,
That's so interesting. I completely forgot. Yeah, because we just covered the City of Brass versus the City of Glass.
But everyone knows about Brass, and it's like, but that's boiling hot, and
and you don't want to go there,
and it's not a nice place. But this seems like
this is what place you want to go. Yeah, this is a tourist destination. Absolutely. Bad PR, I think, on their end. And then the final thing, just to say, as we always, obviously the spell keys and stuff like that. I thought what was interesting here, obviously, the alterations, in a sense of like physical alterations such as ice storm simply sort of drift apart rather than rain down. So again, it's that idea about it's not as effective, or it's super effective.
I see a bit like how Elsa does her like ice.
It just sort of spreads out like like snowflakes, but like connecting to almost like the covalent bonds and stuff like that in chemistry.
Bringing out of the bag, covalent bonds.
I mean, I don't know if that's the actual term of it. I can't remember. Bonds in the things. Oh, you believe me? That's very kind. if there's spell keys that are created for the use in the plane of water,
Mm.
they're mostly physical objects, just like those that you can use in the plane of earth. But what I do like, there's little flavor, some detail. I think it's
Yeah.
great, is that there's a magical inscription carved upon like the tooth or a bone of an aquatic creature, and as a result, they're not just desired because of their sort of function, but also they're quite beautiful as well. So again, I love the idea of like describing jewelry that you might like have, or like a friendship bracelet, but then it's
Did
got
you
teeth in
have,
it.
you're of a similar age to me, did you as a teenager have a shark tooth or a tooth necklace?
No, I was like I was more into my chains and like very metal goth
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
Yeah,
I
I was
went through
the
my
opposite.
skater when
Oh,
I
you
did
had
my
skater
sort of I
stuff.
was skater goth, so like I was born I
Yeah.
went on both sides, but when I was in my sort of more skatery vibes, I
Oh,
was
you had your
definitely with the little neck of
sharp tooth.
like shark teeth and stuff like that, surfer
But
look.
again, that could be another thing. Where, again, another fetch question. Like, oh, we need the teeth of a certain
Dude, you know what? I
shark.
need a fucking cool shark tooth for my bloody cool necklace so
Hey,
I can
we
rad
need
what
10
wait, fine.
teeth, and you bring
Yeah.
those back as a sort of fetch quest. And
Yeah.
yeah, well, there
For
you
the
go.
god of dude.
Well, thank God there's not enough information on there to be in here. Well, there you go. That is a very quick stop, our
Yeah.
final stop in this elemental planes, the four of the here of the elemental plane of water. I agree. I kind of wish it had been a bit more spread, detailed, perhaps, and yeah, it does feel a bit more bitty compared to the others. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to going there. But it does feel like, as you rightly said, it feels like there's a lot of pressure on the GM to come up with lots of stuff
So much more.
to. Even though there is stuff about gods, but there's not. I compared to the previous ones in the powers, I don't know. I'm not as drawn into as we've had before. So
Yeah, same, and that's really what. Yeah, I mean, I sort of felt a bit like that slowly on all of them comparative to all the other planes. Where when we're in the Alpha planes, I was like, heck, I want to go here. Heck, I want to go here. Heck, this is so cool. Of course, there was the occasional ones where I was like, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. This is God. You could get on with that. But there was, yeah, and whilst none so far have made me really be like, I've got to get there, until I heard about the City of Glass. And that is the only one where I'm like, okay, I'm now invested, but you've failed to land the punch because there's not enough information there. But it makes me go like, well, that's something that I can see coalescing a campaign around. That's kind of it, really. And so
agreed.
So that's why it comes out on tops slightly, I'd say.
Tiny bit.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So there we go. We've explored air, earth, fire, and water. So those are the four big elements, and now we get into like very narrow. We're gonna go start looking at the weird stuff. So, so Hamilton, where are we going next? What kind of planes are we going to?
Well, we're still going to stick with the sort of the primal planes of elements first, which are the two other ones we need to do. Even though they're not the four key elements, there are two opposing elements that sit within the sort of outer sphere of elements, which is the positive and negative energy planes, which do not necessarily exist exactly as we see them nowadays in current 5e setting, but still relevant today and are very interesting. Something that I think is lacking in some of these, and maybe we might come to when we come to negative energy plane, is negative energy plane is home to the dust men, which are now called the followers of dust. I forget what the new name
Heralds
is.
of Dust.
Heralds of Dust used to be where they had one of their thing, which was like an outpost floating in the endless void that is the negative energy plane, which is a swirling mass of destruction and death, basically, because it just seeps life. And it would very much gave me the place that Stephen Strange goes to in the multiverse one, where it's that sort of citadel when it's just like floating around in this endless void of everything else has been destroyed, apart from his tower, but it's not tower, the sort of place where they go, priory or whatever it's called.
Yeah, very, very sort of gifts awry, and they're sort of when they're in the limbo, because they have to concentrate really hard for their bits to stay together without changing. So yeah, I definitely see that. And then on the flip side of that, when we have the positive energy plane, which
so good it kills you.
So good it kills you. It's had its Yakult, and it's going to give you more Yakult until you are full of Yakult and you explode.
It does the Star Trek thing where you turn into a light being. Is kind of what it maybe is, how it is. I don't know. You know how everyone in when we ascend in Star Trek, you ascend to light being.
Rapture. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. You transport a beam
Well,
to.
they always kind of like people in that always like go, I become so much of a good person, or my true form of a god is just light being. Do you know what I mean? I'm just light. That's it. But yeah,
Absolutely. So
okay.
we'll cover those next time because
Lovely.
they are very short, those chapters. So we'll do it all in
Yeah.
one, just to give you the opposite thing, and then we can go on to the para and the quasi elemental planes, which
Yes.
is going to be very, very exciting. But until then, you can check out all the other previous episodes of this travel book club of the inner planes and the other travel book club we did of the outer planes, and also all of our sibling podcasts of the DM's book club. There'll be links around the screen probably, so go check those out. And you know what? Just at this moment, I've completely forgotten how we end this again. Is it like we see you on the flip side of the inner planes or something
The
ridiculous like
planes.
that?
Yeah, I think it's just that basically.
All right. Well,
All right.
thank
We'll
you so
see you. Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you
On the flip side
of the
of the planes.
planes.
Whoa!
Ah.